What's up, everybody? A little late. Sorry, I was asleep. You know, I have a life outside of this too, you know. So I'm awake now, and that happened 1 minute ago. Thank you so much to our very punctual, very schedule-orientated moderator, Amy. Thank you for waking me up. And yeah, I never got a call on Discord before, so that works pretty well. So, what are we doing now that we're awake? We're going to watch Dan Rashbaum, who's going to put us straight back to sleep. Hopefully not. But it is kind of lengthy, and it's a lot, well, it's not lengthy, really. It's only 54, 57 minutes, something like that. But the thing is with Dan is he makes things seem longer than they are by saying less than he could have said, because he has a lot of gaps. It's a strange thing that happens with physics with Daniel Rashbaum. Yeah, Rashbaum is extremely offensive and unlikable, Clarissa. You're right. I think he just ticks people off. Which is kind of funny, because his whole deal, it seems to me, is this boyish charm. Oh, that's our Dan. That's our charming Dan, you know. I just imagine him where in the newspapers, in the cartoons, he'd be the guy with the big shining teeth, having just been to the Adelson Institute, and always with a comb in his pocket. Okay. Welcome to everybody in the chat. Apologies for my tardiness today. But you know, I didn't want to. Someone said, "Oh, Carl Steinbeck's on tonight," so I didn't want to clash with him. You know, if we can help it. I don't think we can. I think he's starting in 40 minutes. So anyone who wants to catch his show, you're more than welcome to not watch this show. I don't care. I mean, I do this for me. Where are we? We'll share screen. Which one are we sharing? This one. Okay. Hang on. Got it. I was having such a great dream. Yeah, in the dream I was doing this stream, but I had a huge packet of licorice all sorts given to me by one of our Discord family members. I won't say which one, but I was doing it from inside the driver's seat of her Winnebago, the enormous big Winnebago. But now I'm awake and doing it for real. Okay, that's cool. So let's do it.
Is the defense prepared to give its opening statement?
Yes, Your Honor.
You may proceed.
Judge, we just need one moment to fix why.
Go ahead.
See what I mean? He was going to say something technical, and this is, fixed wires, technical stuff that you don't need to worry about because you're a judge. And are we prepared? Yes, we are absolutely prepared. We are absolutely prepared to start our preparation, to be prepared to give our opening statement. So if we can just prepare for that, now that we're ready to prepare to present, we'll be right with you. And we're fixing wires. Do that again.
Is the defense prepared to give its opening statement?
Yes, Your Honor.
You may proceed.
Judge, we just need one moment to fix why.
Go ahead.
May I proceed, Your Honor? Oh, you don't have that. I jumped the gun.
May I proceed, Your Honor? And then I'm going to take another 5 minutes. You may proceed. I thought that's what you were going to do a minute ago before you had to fix wires. And then you ask and don't proceed? Oh my God, still going, this guy. Hey, thanks so much, Kurt, for the super chat. Thank you.
Thank you. May I proceed, Your Honor?
You may.
Good morning. I didn't get to talk to you that much the last couple of days. My name is Dan Rashbaum. And with
That's that's what we were just waiting for. This is what $1 million defense will buy you, ladies and gentlemen. I do kind of like it, actually, but it doesn't look that glamorous. It looks like they've just put a piece of paper on the... It doesn't even make sense.
with me is Kate Myers, and we represent Charlie Adelson. Now let me start by saying the obvious. The murder of Professor Markel was a tragedy. The world lost a brilliant legal mind. His family lost a son and a brother. This community lost its sense of security. And
they're already bored, the jury. I mean, what is the point of any of this? He could have said that in 4 seconds, but he's choosing to take a whole minute 30 over it. What the hell? The Markel family lost a son, a brother, a cousin, an uncle, a nephew, a godson. Well, maybe not a godson, he's Jewish. What else can you lose? A grandson. You know, it just goes on and on.
lost a good citizen. And his 2 boys, the nephews of Charlie Adelson, lost a loving father.
Yeah, but they got a jet ski each, so, you know.
His senseless murder continues to be felt throughout this community and others.
Sure it does, because you guys are from Dade, we're in Leon, and we're here at the trial for his murder. So I guess you could say tensions are still high.
It was inexcusable, despicable, evil.
Kind of funny, really, because Charlie knows it was him, right? And he's listening to this description. It was inexcusable, despicable, evil, which of course it was. But the reality is that those descriptors are worn very well on Charlie's shoulders, aren't they?
But what I'm going to tell you today is what actually happened. You will see that Charlie Adelson had nothing to do with the murder of Professor Markel. You will see that the state cannot come close to meeting its burden. Why? Because Charlie Adelson is innocent. Now, I don't have to prove innocence. What I'm telling you, I very rarely say in a courtroom as a defense lawyer. Charlie Adelson is innocent. And we'll get there. But the next thing I'm going to tell you, I also rarely say in a courtroom. And you may be surprised to hear this from a defense lawyer. I have great respect for the prosecutors and law enforcement on this case. I have admiration for their efforts after the murder of Professor Markel in trying to find out who did it. You will see that they spent...
Oh, what a twist. A defense counsel that respects and admires the prosecution and cops. Well, there was just one thing missing, wasn't there, Dan? They all got it wrong, as far as you're concerned. That's you weren't here to help them help the Markels. If only would have had you here from day one, Dan.
Countless man hours, cell phone tower dumps, surveillance videos from a boatload of places, buses, cameras on the street. Great law enforcement activity. And it paid off. They got the 3 killers. They convicted them. Sigfredo Garcia, convicted for life. Luis Rivera, Katherine Magbanua, convicted for life. The problem is, as you just heard, the state saw no connection between these people and Professor Markel. So from the very outset, the state suspected the Adelsons, the family. You saw the chart. It wasn't limited to Charlie Adelson. Unindicted co-conspirators in this case, the state has said it, Wendy Adelson, Donna Adelson, Harvey Adelson.
Otherwise known as the Adelsons. Yeah, kind of funny. They saw the prosecution, they didn't see a connection Apart from the baby mama of one of the hitmen was Charlie's girlfriend at the time, and they were also following the bad blood of the Adelsons, which led to the exact same place as the Prius. Katie McBannel. So it all came together, but the state got it wrong. They got it wrong. Hey, thanks so much, Esmeralda, for the coffee. And also Leah, who just bought us 3 cups of coffee on buymeacoffee.com. Link in the description, guys.
The state knew, as you heard, that Wendy Adelson and Professor Markel had gone through a brutal divorce. You're going to see it. But they couldn't find the connection. But then they had their aha moment. As you heard, they determined that at the time of the murder in 2014, Charlie Adelson was dating Katherine McBannel. And they learned that Katherine McBannel had a previous relationship, on again, off again, with Sigfredo Garcia. They learned that Sigfredo Garcia and Katherine McBannel shared 2 children together. They had their connection. The problem is, that's where the state began to guess, began to make assumptions. And you will see, we will show it, that those assumptions didn't make sense. Now, I love jigsaw puzzles. I've loved them.
Hey, who doesn't, Dan? You know, what are Sunday afternoons for if they're not for putting together a fine jigsaw puzzle, Dan?
Since I'm young. The reason why I love
it's not something you really pick up later in life. I think everyone starts out with a jigsaw puzzle early on, you know. I think it's because it's so easy to do.
them is because they only work if every piece fits. No matter what you do with the jigsaw puzzle, if a piece doesn't fit, it becomes a mess. You can't hammer it, and you can't ignore it. Because if you ignore it, you have holes in the puzzle. What you're going to see is, with regards to this case, that's exactly what the state tried to do. They heard things, they saw things.
Man, my cousin Vinny did such a better analogy with this and actually did some magic, which is funny because I've always thought that Daniel Rashbaum looks a little bit like a magician, the kind you would get that visits the house and performs at a 6-year-old's birthday party, right? My cousin Vinny says, listen, the prosecution wants to build a case against you, and when they build their case, that's like building a house. And he's got bricks. He's got these strong bricks, and they're the right shape, they're the right size, and he's building this house. But when you look at the bricks from the right angle, they're as thin as this playing card. So it's so much better than a piece of puzzle piece that's not the right size. It won't fit. So you end up with a mess. The state's case is a mess. It's weak. But, you know, we know from the jailhouse calls that sitting down, planning this defense with Dan, he's like, we're going to make it for a 5th grade level because we're in Tallahassee and they're all dumb hicks. So we need to make this case for a 5th grade level. So we're really going to hammer home the thing about the jigsaw puzzle pieces because, you know, Tallahassee can only handle children's games for the 3 to 6s.
But there were problems. They couldn't fit all the pieces together under their theories that they told you about today. I'm going to show you how those puzzles, those pieces, they didn't fit. They don't fit. And why? Respectfully, the state does not know what happened on July 18, 2014. On that day, 2 crimes occurred. The first one, the state knows about, and that was the brutal, heinous murder of Professor Markell. The other one, they don't know about. They're about to find out like you. Because that day would forever change Charlie Adelson's life. But before we get there, I like cliffhangers.
It's a shame we can't see Georgia Kappelman at this moment, because I'm sure she's wearing her very best I'm about to be enlightened face. Just gripping the edge of her seat.
It's important to give you some background and timeline of the events. Charlie Adelson is 46 years old, single with a young son. He grew up in South Florida, in Coral Springs in Broward County. His father was a dentist, a local dentist. It wasn't the Adelson Institute when Charlie was growing up. It was a small dental practice with his dad.
They're really fixated on separating themselves from this Adelson Institute. Remember when Charlie was on the stand and he's like, oh, you know, when I came out of my residency, I joined the practice and I said, hey, let's give it a fancy name. You know, just for a fancy name. They're really desperate. Like the people of Tallahassee on the jury are going to be like, hey, fuck these guys. They've even got an institute named after them. They must be rich. They live in Miami and drive $250,000 cars. They must be rich. This guy has a pool, a jet ski, and a boat. They must be rich. We hate the rich.
Charlie is the middle child of 3. He is very close with his parents. As they said, he is very close with his mom.
I'd call it something beyond close, Rashbaum. I'd call it Norman Bates living in a motel, dressing up his mother's skeleton and having make-believe conversations with her. Kind of weird, okay?
Growing up, the family was middle class. And Charlie was not particularly close with either of his siblings. He grew closer with Wendy as they got older. He went to college at the University of Central Florida, went to dental school in South Florida, and then periodontic school. When he graduated as a periodontist, he had an idea. Rather than work in his own practice, he figured that he could travel around to dental practices all over South Florida. He would be a traveling periodontist. So what you are going to learn in this case is that Charlie Adelson had practices from the very south of South Florida to as far places as Jupiter. He was in the car sometimes for hours in a day. And he worked a lot. You're going to see that. He was a workaholic. He spent a lot of time.
This guy worked as far away as Jupiter and 2 of its moons. He would travel past Mars, across the asteroid belts of the solar system to Jupiter, where he would perform dental surgery for free on emergency aliens.
I'm in that car. And what did he do when he was in the car to pass the time? He spoke a lot on the phone. He would talk to whoever would listen to him. And you're going to see in this case, this is one thing we won't deny, Charlie Adelson likes to talk. And he likes to repeat himself. And who would he speak with the most? He'd speak with his girlfriend. He'd speak with his mom. He'd speak with his friends. Now, Wendy Adelson, who's a state witness, followed a different path. She went to a prestigious university in Boston. She then went to school in England on a Truman Fellowship, and later went to law school. She got scholarships for law school and college. Soon after starting law school, she met Dan Markel, and they fell in love. They got married. They ultimately moved to Tallahassee, where they both worked for FSU, Professor Markel as a law professor of the law school. Charlie Adelson didn't have much to do with either Professor Markel or Wendy during their marriage or before their marriage. He would talk to his sister periodically, maybe once every 2 or 3 weeks. They lived in Tallahassee for years. Charlie Adelson visited him in Tallahassee 2, maybe 3 times. Charlie loved his sister. He sought advice from her, as she did with him every once in a while. But they weren't super close. They were brother-sister. The truth is that Charlie Adelson was a little self-centered. He was building his career. See, that traveling periodontist, in the beginning, it wasn't that successful. But by the time of this case, in the 2013-2014 time period, you're going to see that Charlie Adelson was making a lot of money. His practice was booming. He was working 6, sometimes 7 days a week. You'll see it on the wires. You'll see it in text messages. He would start his day early in the morning, and most days he wouldn't get home till 8, 9, 10 at night. At the time when this murder occurred, he was not married. He had no kids. He had a lot of money. And he was living a very good life. Now, in 2012, Wendy Adelson, on a trip down to South Florida, confides in her brother that she was having problems in her marriage. She told Charlie that she and Professor Markel had been going through marriage counseling. She asked him what he thought. He said, "Look, I want you to be happy, but you have to do what's best for you. I'm here to listen." Charlie had no involvement whatsoever in Wendy's decision to divorce Professor Markel. You'll hear that. And in September of 2012, Wendy filed for divorce. And you're going to hear about how she filed for the divorce, and you're going to learn that Charlie had no involvement in her leaving the house, had nothing to do with him. But we got to talk about TVs.
Oh, you mean that Charlie wasn't the one who suggested to plan a vicious, brutal, Visigoth-like sacking of the marital home? Something that would really stick it to Markel. That didn't come from Charlie. So that was just Wendy's evil plot. Nothing to do with him. No, you're going to learn that. You'll learn how Wendy left the home.
And you're going to hear a lot about TVs in this case. Excuse me.
We're going to hear about a lot of TVs after the case when Janice is like, I'm taking the TVs. I'm taking the 60-inch and I'm leaving the wall brackets on the wall so it looks like an anti-aircraft gun.
See, Charlie has a really bad history of telling bad jokes. So when Wendy left the house, his mom told him.
Charlie has a really bad history of telling bad jokes. His favorite subject are Mexicans, gays, people from Tallahassee, and any minority, or
that she didn't have a TV. He asked her, he said, what can I do to help Wendy? She's moved to a new place. She's left most of the stuff behind. What can I do to help?
She's left most of the stuff behind? How do you figure that? What do you mean she's left most of the stuff behind? She left most of the stuff that she broke on the way out behind. They paint this picture. Wendy, she had to get onto Obamacare, and she didn't even have a TV because she had to leave this horrible marriage in a hurry to protect the kids because she didn't want them growing up thinking that's how you treat women. Ugh, sick people.
His mom said she didn't have a TV. He said, okay, when you go to Tallahassee, go to Best Buy, buy a TV for Wendy, and I'll pay you for it. And so Wendy got the TV, and she called Charlie. This is back in 2012. The murder's in 2014. And she thanked him for the TV.
Yeah, so we were talking about the TV way before the murder. So why would we use TV for the murder? Her divorce present was the TV, not the murder. Dad's big birthday present was the paella chef, not the murder.
And he didn't say he looked into hiring a hitman. He joked, a bad joke. And he said it was cheaper than hiring a hitman. Now, not only was it a bad joke, but you're going to hear in this trial, Charlie repeated the joke. He repeated it a lot to a lot of people. You're going to hear that he repeated it as late as March of 2014. So the man that they think...
Oh, yeah, he was repeating it all the way up until just before Professor Markel was murdered by a hitman. Yeah, he kind of stopped telling the joke after after Professor Markel was murdered by a hitman. The joke really kind of lost its edge.
Hired a hitman is joking to others about hiring a hitman. Puzzle pieces.
Puzzle pieces. Think about it, Tallahassee. Think about the last time you did a puzzle with Grandma on the front porch. The last time you did a puzzle with Grandma on the front porch and you couldn't find one of the pieces. and the jigsaw puzzle was ruined and you had to throw it away. This is like that, Tallahassee, okay? Just like when you had to throw Grandma's puzzle away. Because she's been putting that puzzle together since 1948. And the pieces, they were lost. And it didn't work anymore. What was I just going to say? Yeah, the thing that Daniel Rashbaum does, which is something we see a lot in shitty defenses, is where they take the direct evidence and they say, oh yeah, like that's evidence, like she'd be that dumb. It's like Katie McBanoir. They did it with the deposits for the money. You know, she went to multiple bank accounts in one day, ladies and what does Tara Kwas say? I can only do her voice when it's actually a quote. I can't think of one. But yeah, they're saying, yeah, like she'd be that dumb to make deposits, multiple deposits, cash deposits, small deposits, all different amounts at multiple banks in one day. Are we to believe, ladies and gentlemen, that she's that dumb? Well, yeah. You know, we've heard her talk.
And you're going to learn why his repeating of that joke is going to be so important. I'm going to tell you in a little bit. Keep in the back of your mind. But let's first go back to the divorce. The divorce was bitter. It was emotional. Wendy Adelson and Professor Markel, they'd have good times. But when things were bad, they would fight about everything. And in January 2013, Wendy Adelson filed a motion to relocate to South Florida with her two boys. That motion was opposed by Professor Markel. Now, what you're going to learn in this trial is that Wendy Adelson...
Hey, ring the bell, Soap. We got 100 people in the stream, and it's only going up. So let's get some likes rolling into the channel, guys. How about it?
Never thought that motion would be granted. Her lawyer told her that motion would never be granted. But she said, let's give it a shot. Charlie had very little to do with the motion. He knew she was filing it. He knew she didn't have much chance of getting it. And the motion was denied. When it was denied, it didn't change Charlie Adelson's life one bit. But unlike Charlie, his mom and dad were upset. They were upset because their daughter had a job opportunity in South Florida. She had no family support in Tallahassee, and they wanted her home. And you will see that Donna and Harvey Adelson are very involved in their children's lives. We won't run away from that. You will see that Donna Adelson and Harvey came up with a lot of crazy ideas. I mean, crazy ideas. You're going to see them. You've heard about some of them. When they show you those crazy ideas, take a look if any of them includes murder. Doesn't. Take a look at...
Yeah, Tallahassee. The people that were plotting the murder, they didn't send that they were plotting the murder in a email. No, they came up with all of this other horrible, brutal, sadistic action. You know.
Any of those crazy ideas include anything illegal? It doesn't. Take a look at if they're actually then go to lawyers to make sure that their ideas are legal. Murderers. You heard it. Unindicted co-conspirators going to lawyers to make sure that what they're offering is allowed. You're going to see that. But the ideas were crazy. You're going to read the emails, a lot of emotion. A mother-in-law, a grandmother with a lot of emotion. And you're going to see that Wendy Adelson, she rejected them. She rejected the ideas. They were never presented to Dan Markel. And then you're going to see that there was another idea. They mentioned it in their opening, but they don't understand the importance of it. See, at one point in time, Donna Adelson and Harvey Adelson came with an idea to pay Professor Markel $1 million to allow their daughter to relocate. And they went to Charlie, who frankly by this point in time had more money than them. And they said, will you lend your sister $350,000? She'll pay you back or we'll pay you back. And he said, sure. And you're going to see that they presented this idea to Wendy Adelson. And the idea wasn't to take the boys out of Professor Markel's life. The idea was that with the $1 million, if Professor Markel agreed, he could live in South Florida and commute back and forth to Tallahassee. He could work out his schedule. He didn't teach every day of the week. He could work out his schedule so that he could still teach at the university and go back and forth. You're going to see that Wendy Adelson never made that offer.
Yeah, because they figured they could get the same job done for $100,000 by hiring Katie and a couple of goons.
But it's very important. Like the joke, I want you to put it in your back of your mind for now.
Yeah. Put it in the back of your mind, Tallahassee, where there's a lot of empty space, Tallahassee. You can put, if there's enough space in the back of your mind for a jigsaw puzzle and the $1 million offer, Tallahassee.
Let's fast forward to October 2013. October 2013, Charlie started dating.
Hey, Dan, what brand is that water? Is that Alaskan glacier melted down into the coolest, crispest, 10,000-year aged water? Purest on Earth. 10,000-year-old glacier from Alaska. Melted down.
Katherine Magbanua. We'll call her Katie. She was beautiful. She was smart. Like Charlie, she graduated from UCF. She was hardworking. He met her in one of the dental practices. At first, the relationship was casual. They wanted it that way. Charlie particularly liked it and liked Katie because she had 2 children. He worked a lot. His priority was his job. And Katie didn't bother him a lot. He only saw her like once, maybe twice a week. That's what he liked. And she was smart. She was fun. And he treated her very well. And that was very different, you'll learn, from how she was treated previously. Now, you'll hear that he spent a lot of time with Katie over the months that they dated. And remember how I told you Charlie talks a lot and repeats himself a lot? Well, when they were together, he did just that.
Hey, Crime and Coffee, thanks for the like.
He talked
Good to see you.
about his day. He talked about what was going on in the world. He talked about his family, which, by the way, was a constant topic every single day. Because when Charlie's driving in the car every morning for an hour to work and an hour home, sometimes longer, he talked to his mom on the phone. And when he talked to his mom on the phone, what would be a topic of heavy conversation quite frequently? Wendy's divorce. All the problems in the divorce. They told you that. They told you that in opening. And what would Charlie do? He would tell these things to his girlfriend. And what were some of the things he told her? Well, he told her about the $1 million offer. He told her that he could pay it in cash. She said, that's a lot of money. He said, no, I have it in cash, and I'm going to get it back.
Oh, hey, thanks so much for the super chat, Crime and Coffee. That's very, very kind of you. Thank you very much.
He told her several times the joke. Over time, you're going to see through text messages that Katie wanted a deeper relationship. And you'll see that Charlie didn't want that. You'll also learn, and the timeline is important. They meet in September. They start dating in October of 13. You're going to see that over time, it takes a couple months, Charlie starts to learn a little bit more about Katie's ex, Sigfredo Garcia. And what you're going to learn is that Charlie Adelson never meets Sigfredo Garcia officially, but by all accounts, he was not a good guy. Violent, long criminal history. Sigfredo Garcia and Katie had been high school boyfriend, girlfriend. And Katie was the love of Sigfredo's life. He lived for her. And you're going to see that Sigfredo Garcia hated Charlie Adelson. Puzzle pieces.
Yeah. And you are going to hate Charlie Adelson. By the end of this trial, you are not even going to need to deliberate. Either after all the puzzle pieces of my case fit, you're just going to want to give him the death penalty.
So let me repeat it. You saw their chart. The shooter of Professor Markel, the man who...
Thank you so much, Matilda, too. Good to see you, and thank you so much for the super chat. It's very kind.
Murdered him. Hated Charlie Adelson. According to them, his co-conspirator. And you're going to hear, not from our witnesses, from their own witnesses, that he wanted to kill Charlie Adelson. You're going to hear that in March of 2014, just 7 or 8 weeks before that first attempt of murder that they talk about, he tried to kill him. Puzzle pieces.
Puzzle pieces. Is he trying to do a little bit of neuro-linguistic programming there or something? With this gesture he makes where he's trying to make them fit with his little weird monkey boy hands.
You're also going to hear about a phone call on July 1, 2014.
You know, I wanted to kind of go through Daniel Rashbaum's opening statement because I would say that it's most likely that he will be giving the opening statement in Mother Donna's trial that happens in just over a couple of weeks now. In 3 weeks today, we'll be right into the mix. We'll have gotten through jury selection and we'll be maybe a third of the way through the trial, right? So I wanted to watch this video with you guys today to see if we can, you know, find parts that will be, excuse me, used in Donna's trial. But he hasn't really said anything yet. And I can guarantee you, we can't see the jury, but I can guarantee you they're all just slowly blinking, waiting for this to end. You know, mind drifting off like they're in the middle of watching a really bad play. And they're thinking about, you know, just stuff in their own lives. Because Dan Rashbaum has this unique ability with his voice. Well, it's not unique, but it's not desirable if you're an attorney, of completely losing your attention. I have no idea what he's been talking about. I remember puzzle pieces, the fact that he thinks Tallahassee people are dumb, and Charlie's a millionaire. It's all I've taken away from it so far.
You're going to actually hear that July 1, 2014 call is how they found these guys. It's actually the craziest fact in this entire case, and there's a lot of crazy facts.
Hey, Carol Johnson. Sorry, Johansson. I always say Johnson. I'm so sorry, Carol. Carol Johansson and Esmeralda, thanks so much for the support, guys. My hard work? No. This isn't hard work to me at all. I do it for the love, but it's so kind of you guys to give a bit of support this way. That's really appreciated. Thank you so much, guys.
You're going to hear that on July 1, 2014, Sigfredo Garcia made a call to the cell phone number of Harvey Adelson. It's the only call that helped investigators connect these folks to the Adelsons in the beginning. It actually broke the case.
Or which call?
It's the only call.
Oh, the call from Sigfredo to Harvey, right? We're going to go mano a mano. Oh, I think he's just about to say it.
That helped investigators connect these folks to the Adelsons in the beginning. It actually broke the case. What they don't know, what you're going to see, it's in text messages. It's discussed on the wires. They don't know it because they don't understand it because they weren't there. Is that on July 1st, 2014, just 3 weeks or so after the first murder attempt, on July 1st, 2014, just 3 weeks or so after the first murder attempt. And by the way, just 17 days before the murder.
Do you really think the jury can read that from all the way over there on the screen? I can't see it on this little video window, but I think it could be clearer for something that you have to read from the other side of the room. I don't care if it's on a big projection screen. I'd be surprised if anyone can read that from the jury section. I got a pretty good idea how big that is on the wall, and it's not big enough to read.
Let me repeat that. The murder happens on July 18, 2014. On July 1st, 2014, Sigfredo Garcia tries to run Charlie off the road. He threatens him. And what you're going to hear is that on July 1,
there's something so funny about Charlie towing a jet ski, having to very quickly do a 3-point turn or K-turn with a jet ski on the back. I bet that was fun. While this maniac thug is pounding his fists on the steering wheel, reaching down to grab a metal pipe from the footwell of his car, and you've got to do a 3-point turn with a jet ski on the back of the car in a small alleyway. Man, no pressure.
He's so upset that he calls the Adelson Institute. He doesn't realize that Charlie isn't the doctor at the Adelson Institute. He just comes in and out of the place. So he gets their voicemail machine. And you know how
he comes in and out of the place, in and out of the receptionists, and then goes to lunch. And then he's gone for 3 hours, comes back drunk, and we send him home.
How dentists are. They say in an emergency, call a cell phone number. They take your call at home on the cell phone number. Well, he hears in an emergency, call Dr. Adelson at such and such number. He thinks he's calling Charlie Adelson, but he calls Harvey Adelson. And he calls him and he threatens him. He tells him, if you keep dating Katie, we're going to go mano y mano. I'm going to kill you. 17 days before, according to them, he conspired with this man to kill Professor Markel. Puzzle pieces.
That's his thing, isn't it? That's Dan Rashbaum sees puzzle pieces and then monkey hands as the glue that will hold this opening statement together, right? Reminding Tallahassee not to believe in the puzzle. The state's puzzle doesn't work because they've lost half the pieces, and half that they do have are bits from another puzzle that they've tried to make fit but can't, right? Puzzle pieces.
What you're going to learn is that in the spring of 2014, it became apparent to Katie that her dreams of financial security with Charlie were not going to work out.
Hey, I like this comment, Kurt. Kurt says, I wonder if Judge Everett is thinking about the Skittles in his pocket. You know that Judge Everett has 2 packs of Skittles in his pocket at all times. And yeah, the tropical flavor ones, not the normal ones, the tropical flavor ones.
You will learn that Katie heard the Hitman joke. You will learn that she heard the $1 million offer and she got some ideas in her head. The state itself has called Katherine Magbanowa the mastermind. And that's exactly what she was. So now, let's get to July 18th. I kept you waiting long enough.
Yeah, Clarissa, Sigfredo had the kids in the car. What a reckless idiot. Yeah, wasn't he eating pizza with them at a place and then saw Charlie pick up Katie, and then bundled the kids in the car, leave the pizza, throw some money on the table for the bill, and then go and threaten the dentist probably because he saw the jet ski and he thought it looked really fun, and like he wanted a jet ski but couldn't afford it because he spent all his money on coke. It was the jet ski that tipped him over the edge, I reckon.
The June attempt didn't happen because Rivera didn't want to kill Dan Markel when his boys were around. See, what you're going to learn is during that June attempt on June 4th, 5th, Professor Markel had custody of the boys. You're going to learn that Professor Markel and Wendy Adelson shared custody 50-50. But you're going to learn that the state thinks Wendy Adelson was involved with her brother in a murder for hire, and she chose for the killers to kill her ex-husband when he had custody of her kids. Puzzle pieces. So you're
I think that's 5 times puzzle pieces now.
going to learn that Luis Rivera, who is a bad guy, he had some conscience somewhere and he didn't want to do it in front of the kids. So they came back. By the way, on July 18th, who had custody of the kids when the murder actually happened? Professor Markel. You're going to hear he dropped them off at school. But this family who did this so that their grandchildren could be with them were going to risk for 2 hired hitmen to go up when he had custody of the kids. Puzzle pieces. July.
I really don't think, Wendy's kids are important to her at all. People go on like, oh, yeah, but she really loved those kids. She was obsessed with those kids. She wouldn't let anything happen with those kids. Listen, those kids aren't kids to her. They're assets. They're tools for her to present herself in ways that benefit her. That's all they are. They are not, this is not a normal thing where a parent will love kids and, not let anything happen. She'll let something happen to those kids if it's convenient for her, believe me. It is not a normal situation. People need to stop thinking what they would do and applying it to an Adelson brain, because it doesn't work. That's how they get you. You have to take yourself out of humanity if you want to go up against an Adelson, because they're not in humanity, especially Wendy, right? I think Donna and Charlie, they're still people in a way. Dumb, selfish, arrogant people. But this is why I'm okay with Donna and Charlie serving life in prison. I think that satisfies the need for justice. Fancy Fiction was saying the other day, should they get the death penalty? And she said that she doesn't really believe in the death penalty. And neither do I, but I'm not an American. We haven't had the death penalty in England since, I can't remember. I think it was like 61 or something. The last person that was executed. I don't know. I can't remember. But what I do think we should have in this case, and maybe someone can let Fancy Fiction know my thoughts on this, is especially for Wendy Adelson, instead of the death penalty or instead of life in prison, what we should have the ability for Judge Everett to sentence her to is to have her covered in peanut butter and thrown into the gorilla enclosure at the zoo, where the biggest gorilla, Silverback, Zazu, it's his birthday, a ton of banana bread as well for all the other gorillas, so they don't feel left out, and we just see what happens. Wendy Adelson, stripped naked, covered in peanut butter, thrown into the gorilla enclosure for Silverback Zazu's birthday. That would, I would say, yep, okay, that's her debt paid to society. I'm just not going to be satisfied having Wendy get a life sentence, you know? It's not going to fill my boots. But the gorilla thing, I think, could work. So I'd really like to introduce it, you know. Maybe I should write to the judge, you know, that Petudo lady the other day who wrote that really good letter. We should go through that letter together. Maybe tomorrow in the day, we'll do a short live and go through that letter together. But if we could take some of the wording out of that letter and just, you know, rewrite the context so that it's not about courtroom 3B or courtroom 3G. It's about Zazu, the silverback, and the gorilla enclosure. And my idea with covering Wendy in peanut butter and throwing her in, you know. Don't ask, don't get, right?
15th for Charlie starts as a normal day. He works. You're going to see he lives in Fort Lauderdale. Now, I don't know how many of you are familiar with South Florida, so I'm going to give you a little bit of geography lesson. He lives in Fort Lauderdale. That day, he's working in 2 offices.
Yeah, I'm just about to patronize the shit out of you, Tallahassee, because we know that most of you have never been 3 miles away from Monroe in your life. So Florida is a state. And there's the northern part of the state. That's where we are, Tallahassee. And then there's down, or some people call it south, right? So down Florida or South Florida, there are other places with names, better names, more attractive names than Tallahassee, okay? Unbelievable. Let me give you a little bit of a geography lesson of your own state.
Because he'd often work in 2 offices a day. He'd work in the morning at one place and the afternoon at another. So he's working in 2 offices. The first office he's working in, both of them actually, are in Jupiter, Florida. Now, if you're familiar with South Florida, Fort Lauderdale and Jupiter are not close. With South Florida traffic, in the morning, he was in the car for at least 2 hours. Now, he came home late that night, you're going to hear, so traffic was a little bit better, but it's probably still an hour to an hour and a half. Jupiter is north of Palm Beach. When I drive up here and I hit Jupiter, I know I'm about a third of the way here. That's a good way to look at it. If you live in Fort Lauderdale, when you hit Jupiter, you're 1/3 done.
Well, there you go, G. G's informed us the last death penalty carried out was in 1965 in England. I knew it was the 60s. And it was totally abolished in 69. Okay. So it's not in our kind of thinking, right, G? Don't get me wrong. There's cases where I'd be, I'd be like, just give me the gun. I want to be the one to execute this criminal. But just as a general idea. But you know, states is for the states to sort out, though.
He's in the car and he's talking on the phone. And you're going to see it. We're going to show you what the phone calls are about. He talks to his sister, talks to his mom, talks to his girlfriend. We'll talk to you about it. There are phone calls. You're going to see it. There are a lot of phone calls. And there are a lot of phone calls to his girlfriend. And there are a lot of phone calls to his mom. We're not going to deny that. And he works in these 2 offices. And at around 6 o'clock, you'll see a text message that he's about to start a very long surgery, a big procedure. By the way, the text messages throughout the day are normal. Just after 7 p.m., he gets a call from his mom. And he's told that Professor Markel has been shot. And he's shocked. He's upset. His first reaction is, Wendy and the boys okay? He's supposed to have dinner originally with a friend that night. But earlier in the day, that changes, and he's supposed to have dinner with Katie. And you're going to hear that Katie and him had gotten in a fight a couple days earlier about dinners. You'll hear it. And what you'll learn is after he finds out what happened, tells Katie he doesn't want to go to dinner. He leaves the office at around 8 o'clock in Jupiter.
Yeah, he turned around to Katie and said, "You're either stupid or you're lying." We got some great Charlie Adelson quote merch coming out soon, guys. That's going to be one of them. You're either stupid or you're lying. I just love that for some reason. It's so abusive on so many ways, you know. It's just, yeah.
And you'll learn that Katie tells him she'll come to his house that night to comfort him. He shook up.
Yeah,
Now,
she'll be around here to comfort him and take 138 grand.
let me be clear. You're going to hear he wasn't close with Professor Markel. They weren't friends. They had nothing in common. But he shook up because someone he knew, the father of his nephews, had been shot. When Katie arrived that night, and you're going to learn more details of how she gets there, what she has to do to get there. It's not planned. You're going to see that. The state's going to put on that evidence. You're going to learn that she's scrambling to get a babysitter. You're going to learn, by the way, that Charlie had seen her for lunch the day before. So if it's a murder for hire, why didn't she get the money then? Puzzle pieces. But you're going to learn that she gets there that night, sometime after 11. And when she gets there, she is frantic. She's upset. And he's scared because he's never seen her this way. And she sits him down and she tells him something terrible has happened. She says that a friend of hers had shot Professor Markel. She tells him over and over that she had nothing to do with it. But these people, she was talking too much. And her friend and these people learn about the problems that his family was having with Professor Markel. They learned about the $1 million offer. And they got it in their minds to do this. As you can imagine, Charlie is...
Hey, Rabbit, no, I hadn't heard that. Sarah's got a lawyer, has she? I was going through her jail behavior reports today, though, and they're funny. I'm going to cover those on another show. I think tomorrow, guys, is going to be the day of shorts. But not shorts. Short live streams, because there's some documents we need to go over. And to put them all in one, it's like multiple cases. So, I don't know. We'll see what happens. But yeah, we'll have to check that out too. Sarah's got a lawyer.
His life has just forever been altered. He asks, who are these people? She won't tell him. It's not safe for you to know.
Was T behind what happened to me?
Screaming at her. She won't tell him. Charlie had a guess. You will hear in detail what happened that night. You will learn that Charlie Adelson was told if he didn't pay within the next 48 hours, he or one of his family members would be next. You will learn that Katie repeatedly said that she had nothing to do with it and acted distraught. You will hear how she said that she would help him. You will learn about the initial payment. It wasn't $100,000. It was more than $100,000. He took out everything he had in his safe. You're going to learn about that. The state doesn't know it.
The state doesn't know it. They're unprepared. They don't know anything, the state. They think it's $100,000. It was more. And why would we tell you it was more? Because we have the truth, Tallahassee. Look at all these facts we have, Tallahassee. It's such an obvious tactic as well when you correct the state on non-probative elements. Yeah, the state said that Charlie scratched his ass with his left hand, but we know that he used his right. Right? Because we smelt his fingers. Because Rashbaum just loves doing that, doesn't he? It's like, yeah, okay, well, all right, he scratched his ass with his right hand. But we're here about the murder case.
It was more money. But you're going to learn he didn't have $333,000.
Hey, thanks so much, Angel Baby, for the support, and thank you so much for your kind comments. We see you.
So he had to pay every month. They don't know about that either. Payments every month. Does that sound like a murder for hire? Or does that sound like extortion?
Oh, long, serious, leaning pause there, Rashbaum. Does that sound like a murder for hire? Or does that sound like extortion? And I know you guys can't see me, but I'm leaning forward and staring at the computer right now. Does that sound like a murder for hire? Or does that sound like extortion, Tallahassee? Does that sound like a double extortion, Tallahassee? What about it, Tallahassee?
You're going to hear about these gifts. And you're going to learn that the gifts were just that. They were gifts. Because as time went on, he became more and more certain that Katie was not involved. He became more and more certain that she was helping him. And he wanted to keep her happy too because he needed her. He needed her help.
I was keeping her happy. The extortion never went up and Katie was always broke. So I figured that she was keeping me alive, so I kept her happy.
And you will hear that the payments changed a couple months after the night of the extortion. 2 crimes. You'll hear that the payments changed and that Katie was put on the books of the Adelson Institute. Paper trail. They created a paper trail. Puzzles don't fit. Pieces of the puzzle don't fit. And you'll hear that in order to put her on the books, despite Katie telling him the night of July 18th, you can never talk about this with anyone. You can never talk on the phone about this. You can never talk about it in public. You can never talk about it anywhere, because if they find out, they will kill you and your family. If they think the police are coming to you to talk to you, they will kill you. Look at what they did to Professor Markel. But you will hear that he...
Yeah, that's why they had to drive to Tallahassee at least twice to kill a man, to demonstrate how serious they were, or like how badly what they were capable of. What a load of ridiculous fantasy. Yeah, you see what we did to Markel? Same thing's going to happen to you. Well, you could have just said, I know what happens when you get shot with a gun. See what happens? It can be lethal. Look at what happened to Professor Markel.
He told someone. He had to. He told his mom. You'll learn that she was the bookkeeper for the Dental Institute. You'll learn why he had to tell her. You'll learn about those checks. They've never been able to understand. Why are they so sequential? Why are they back and forth? You'll learn why.
Yeah, well, why don't you tell us now instead of just stating the evidence in this what is the word? Like it doesn't mean anything. Why they've never been able to work it out, these stupid lawyers. They can't work it out. Why are they so sequential? Why are they going back and forth? Why are they written all out by Donna Adelson?
They talk about the bump in 2016. What I like to call is the second extortion.
Oh, hey, thanks so much, Dog Mama Laura, for the support and the super chat. Dog Mama Laura says, thank you for your great channel and community. That's all right, Dog Mama. And thank you for your kind comment.
What they don't realize is that their undercover operation was...
Hey, Riding Shotgun in the house. Good to see you, Riding. And to all of our fantastic members, C. Malone, Leslie, Riding, Clarissa, Ritz. Great to see you guys especially, and everybody. Kurt, Leslie. Yeah, always fantastic to see our members, guys.
Was an extortion on an extortion. They don't know it. It's not their fault. And we're going to go through the wires with you. We're going to go through Dolce Vita.
Hey, are we one subscriber away from 2,000? That means we'll probably cross it in this episode. And you know what tomorrow will be, guys? Tomorrow will be our 100th live stream. Okay, we're 5 away from 2,000 subscribers. Wow, 1995. It's great when your subscriber count becomes recognizable years. Great stuff, guys. Great work from the community, from the team, the subscribers, the members, the moderators. Everyone's doing their part, and we just got this thing running like a just well-oiled, well-oiled. I fall asleep, a moderator will wake me up from across the Atlantic Ocean. Judy calls, Metrix. Get in the hot seat, Metrix. Wipe the stars out of your eyes, Metrix.
And we're going to show you how they actually prove his innocence. We're going to show you how they are talking carefully. They're talking to him. He's talking about an extortion. They're happy if this bump is the police, because if it's the police, none of them are going to get killed. If it's a bad guy, they're in danger. If you do a murder with someone, the last person in the world you want this bump to be is the police. Because it means they're onto you. puzzle pieces.
That's amazing, isn't it? Right? They really did sit down and just go, okay, the state knows about the stapled money. The state knows that we were really cagey on the phone, and the state knows that we were talking carefully and that we were happy it was the police. How do we explain all that and still be innocent? It'd be great for us to spend the time and come up with a good defense, because it wasn't this extortion defense. None of that worked for a second, right from opening. There's no way a single member of that jury, after this Daniel Rashbaum opening statement, was like going, yeah, okay, so it looks like the defense is going to come in with some really good information.
Not from the first layer, she says, but from the second layer. I got goosebumps when she said it. It's one of my favorite lines in the recording. Not from the first layer, the first extortion, but from the second layer. 20 months later is the bump. That's the second layer to Charlie Adelson at that point in time.
Unbelievable.
You will also see, and what's going to be weird about this case, ladies and gentlemen, and you're going to start to see it today, much of their case, I agree about. They're going to put witnesses up there. I'm not going to ask them one question. Some of their evidence is exactly the truth.
Okay, we've got about another 4 minutes of this stream, guys. We only need 4 subscribers. We need 1 subscriber per minute for the rest of the stream. Then we hit 2,000. So leave a like on the video, subscribe, share, leave a comment. If you'd like to support the channel, you can buy us a coffee at buymeacoffee.com. Link in the description, or become a fantastic Patreon member today. We've got our little community building on there rapidly. It's fantastic. It's great. There's discounts, there's benefits, and the link is in the description, or super chat, super like, super thanks, super sticker. And social networks, Discord, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, in the description, guys. Well done. Well done. Everybody, well done.
It just doesn't prove a murder. The stapled money, it's his money. You will also see that Sigfredo Garcia was arrested on May 25, 2016.
Well, thanks so much, Leslie, for that very generous super sticker. We love you so much. That's very kind of you, Leslie. We really appreciate it.
You will see that Luis Rivera was arrested on June 2nd, 2016. You will see that Katherine Magbanua was arrested on October 1, 2016. Guess who wasn't arrested? Charlie Adelson. He wasn't arrested for 6 more years. And what you're going to see is that they have the exact same evidence.
Well, it sounds like borrowed time for me. I think we should add that onto his sentence. It's life plus the 6 years that you had with your Skyline chili.
In 2016, against Charlie Adelson, that they do today. The same liars. They talk about an enhanced Dolce Vita recording. You're going to get both recordings. You determine if you can hear anything better. See, the state's case against Charlie Adelson is a case of assumptions. It's a case of guesses. It was not brought until weeks before Katie Magbanaway's trial. You can ask yourself why. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for your attention. I want to ask for your patience in this case. A man's life is in your hands. He's innocent. Send him home. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. The attorney's going to start.
Well, it didn't even register with me that he was finished. Oh, I just can't believe that these Adelsons thought that Daniel Rashbaum did a fantastic job. I can't imagine anyone looking at that, having paid for that as a service, going, "Yeah, get him, Dan." It was just awful in every way. Didn't make sense. Wasn't rhythmic. Wasn't engaging. Was patronizing to the jury, to the state, to the court, to the cops. It couldn't have been worse. Unbelievable.
Read your notes. If you choose to take notes, do not get so involved in note-taking that you become distracted from the actual proceedings. Your notes should only be used as an aid to your memory. Is the state ready to give its opening statement?
Yes, Your Honor.
You may proceed.
Thank you. Good morning, y'all. Good morning. Thank y'all for being here with us today. I know that we've been introduced, but y'all haven't heard from me yet. My name is Katherine Dugan, and I'm going to be representing the state of Florida in this case, along with Georgia Kappelman. The last couple of days, we've obviously been in jury selection. Thank y'all for your patience with that. I know there's a lot of waiting involved with that. In jury selection, each side was able to kind of talk with you about your feelings and concepts. Your feelings about the law and different concepts. But now it's time for opening statements.
Hey, Rabbit Inc. I still see 1996. Is it 2000? Did we just cross that milestone? We should announce it. But I don't have that as evidence. I'll check in a minute.
Where each of us is going to kind of give you a roadmap of what we expect that the evidence in this case will show. And then after opening statements, you'll start hearing from witnesses and getting into the actual evidence in this case. So let's get right to it.
You see, she hasn't said anything yet, but even this is so much better than what Dan Rashbaum did. What did he say to the judge at the beginning? We'll be fixing wires. Yeah, we need a TV repairman from the Geek Squad to come and fix up all these wires, Judge Everett.
The reason that we're here today.
Is she wearing Georgia Kappelman's jacket or what? Or do they just have the same wardrobe? I'd love to see them both wearing the Kermit jacket together. Yeah, I wonder if that's ever happened, where they come in to work and they're both wearing the exact same clothes. I bet they look great.
It's because the defendant in this case, Charlie Adelson, hired a hitman to kill his former brother-in-law, Dan Markell. This murder was set into motion because back in 2014, the defendant's family, the Adelson family, had a big problem. And that big problem.
Hey, Kelly KLK, how you doing? And Annie G. Hey, everybody.
Was Dan Markel. And the solution to that problem was this defendant. This defendant was the solution to that problem because he had a girlfriend with connections to the type of people who were willing and capable of pointing a gun at a complete stranger and pulling the trigger. The victim in this case was known as Danny to his friends and family. He was a loving father to 2 little boys. He was a highly respected professor at Florida State College of Law.
Yeah, right, Cassandra. I just love the way that she uses her body as well. You know, she plays her body like an instrument. Her voice, they're all in sync and they all help each other. That's how you do public speaking. I don't know what Daniel Rashbaum has a problem with. He just can't do it.
And tragically, on July 18th of 2014, Dan Markel was shot twice in the head in broad daylight in the driveway of his home in the Benton Hills neighborhood here in Tallahassee. The last day of Dan Markel's life that day began like any other of his mornings that summer. He woke up, he drove his 2 little boys to preschool and dropped them off, and then he drove over to the gym to work out. After finishing his workout, he returned home. He pulled in his driveway, opened his garage, but little did he know that throughout his just normal routine that morning, he was being followed. He was being followed by 2 hired hitmen who traveled all the way from Miami to Tallahassee for the sole purpose of murdering him. And just like something out of a horror movie, he pulls into his driveway and the car that, unknown to him, pulls in right behind him. Moments later, Dan Markel's neighbor heard a gunshot. He looked out the window and he saw a light-colored Toyota Prius backing quickly out of Dan Markel's driveway and then speeding away. The neighbor waited for a couple minutes to see if maybe Dan Markel came out of his house or backed out of his driveway too. And when nothing happened, this neighbor got that funny feeling that maybe something could be wrong here. So he walked over, and what he found was a gruesome scene. He walked in the garage and saw that the driver's side window of Dan Markel's car was shattered. He saw Dan Markel was still behind the wheel. He was alive, but he was moaning, he was unresponsive, and he was terribly injured. The neighbor then goes and calls 911. Law enforcement arrives, and they find Dan Markel unresponsive with gunshot wounds to his head. He was then taken to the hospital where he survived for several hours before he was actually pronounced dead. Dan Markel was 41 years old. And his little boys that were deprived of their father that day were just 3 and 4 years old. Law enforcement immediately began to investigate to figure out who shot Dan Markel. And the evidence they find sets them down 2 separate paths. One path is that they had to track down that light-colored Prius that the neighbors saw fleeing from the crime scene and identify who was inside that Prius. And the other path relates to Dan Markel's personal life. They looked to see who, if anybody, in Dan Markel's personal life would hate Dan Markel enough to kill him. And after years of tireless investigation by law enforcement, both of these 2 paths led directly to this defendant. So Let's talk about the path involving Dan Markel's personal life first. In looking at who might have a motive to kill.
This could not be clearer. We followed two paths, the hitman path and the bad blood with relatives path. And lo and behold, they both led back to Miami, both to the same middle woman. And when we started looking into her, it all fell into place as well. It's the perfect puzzle. Every piece fits. I mean, it's just amazing that Dan Rashbaum had. I don't think he ever thought it was going to work, you know. And I think he was just going through the motions. He was like, "Oh, look, for some reason, these clients, especially the mother, love me because I'm a good Jewish boy, and I know how to schmooze and win over the love and respect and wealth of this elderly client here. I could write my own ticket on this. I'm just going to go through the motions." And he doesn't care that Charlie's never getting out. Do you think Dan Rashbaum stays up all night on his fine Egyptian cotton satin sheets, sweating, going, "Oh my God, Charlie's in jail because I failed him. I failed him." No, he doesn't. He sleeps like a baby, like a very rich, fat baby, in beautiful Egyptian cotton sheets and orthopedic pillows every night.
Kill Dan Markel. Law enforcement learned that Markel was entangled in a very nasty divorce with his ex-wife, who is the defendant's sister. Her name is Wendy Adelson. A review of their divorce case file revealed that Wendy Adelson asked the court to allow her to move back to Miami, where she was from, with the kids, in order to be near her parents, whose names are Harvey and Donna Adelson, and her brother, the defendant. Dan Markel was adamantly opposed to his children being relocated to Miami. He was a law professor here in Tallahassee. This is where he lived. This is where his kids have been raised. He wanted his kids to live here with him. And for this custody dispute, the judge ended up ruling in Dan Markel's favor. So Wendy Adelson was not permitted to move to Miami with the children. Unless, of course, something happened to Dan Markel. A review of Wendy Adelson's emails revealed that her mother, Donna Adelson, hated Dan Markel and was desperate to find a way for Wendy and her children, who were Donna Adelson's grandchildren, to be able to move to Miami. Donna Adelson suggests in these emails that y'all will hear about several ways that Wendy Adelson could threaten or bully Dan Markel into submission, into getting what she wanted him to do. Donna Adelson even suggested offering Dan Markel a $1 million bribe to allow the relocation, and even said that this defendant, Charlie Adelson, would pay a third of that $1 million bribe to Dan Markel to make that happen. The evidence in this case will show that Donna Adelson's closest confidant was her son, the defendant. She and the defendant talked multiple times a day, every day. He was the person with whom she would constantly vent and complain to about Wendy's situation. The defendant was also-
Yeah, absolutely. They were close. I just hope that they weren't close enough to touch each other in any way. That from the calls, you really get that impression sometimes. It is creepy. It is so creepy. What is with the sexual tension between Charlie and his mother? It is so weird. You know, I'm not saying that they're actually like getting it on, but they talk like they are. Or they talk like they might want to. Ugh.
Also the person that Donna Adelson relied on to solve her problems. And this was a big, big problem for Donna Adelson. And she made it the
It's also kind of weird, to me at least, how willing Donna is to just listen to top-notch misogyny from Charlie constantly for hours. You know, I told Wendy, I said, no one, you could put a 37-year-old Victoria's Secret model in front of me and I'd be like, yuck. Oh, 37? Why would I want a 37-year-old when I could have a 25-year-old or a 19-year-old? Oh, how you see the world, Charlie. I feel sorry for you, man.
defendant's problem to solve. So the divorce between Wendy Adelson and Dan Markel was final about a year before the actual murder. But that was not the end of that case. Litigation was ongoing, to say the least. Each side would continue to routinely file violations of the custody agreement, violations of the settlement agreement, and that continued right up until Dan Markel's death in July of 2014. This was a highly emotionally charged situation between them leading up to his death. However, there was no physical violence that Wendy Adelson needed to be rescued from or anything like that. But make no mistake, this was a very messy custody dispute. Shortly before the murder, in fact, Dan Markel, the victim, filed with the court and basically asked the court, he alleged that Donna Adelson was disparaging him to his children by saying bad things about him. And he asked the court to enter an order preventing Donna Adelson from having unsupervised contact with her grandchildren.
This is the other thing Sarah Dugan is really good at, is delivering single ideas per sentence, which is how every sentence should be structured. Written, spoken, whatever. One idea per sentence. It's a good habit to have, guys.
This motion was still pending in court when Dan Markel was killed. The murder of Dan Markel ensured that an adverse ruling on his motion would never be a problem for the Adelsons.
See what I mean? I can't remember what the first one she said there, but if you listen to her sentences, and she speaks in such a way that you know where the punctuation goes, right? Daniel Rashbaum can't do that. You get run-on sentences, and he talks in loops and jumps around like a little chimpanzee. Yeah. I love it when you listen to someone talk and you can feel the commas, the full stops, the periods, or whatever.
And just about 48 hours after the shooting, Wendy Adelson and the little boys relocated to Miami. Shortly thereafter, moved into a home within walking distance of the Adelsons' Miami home. Within a year of Dan Markel's murder, Wendy Adelson legally changed Dan Markel's son's last name from Markel to Adelson. And just like that, their father was just effectively erased from their lives at 3 and 4.
Hey, if we have any Jewish people in the chat, I heard something on Fancy Fiction stream about Wendy saying that the middle name of one of the boys, I think it was Ben, the middle name of one of the boys was the name of one of Dan Markel's ancestors. And Wendy said, but it also started with an A, which was to honor my ancestor, Aaron Adelson. And I always thought that sounded, as did Fancy, sounded like a very cheap way to claim that it was a loss that Wendy lost an honor to both families. But apparently, this is a Jewish thing, where if you give a middle name that starts with a letter, like in this example, A, and the ancestor that you're honoring doesn't have the same name, but it also starts with the letter, that counts as an honor. If any Jewish people in the chat could confirm that with me directly, I'd be very grateful.
And the Adelson's family, their big problem had been solved. You'll hear during this trial that the Adelsons are a very tight-knit family. The defendant and his parents, Harvey and Donna Adelson, they actually even all worked together.
Oh, thanks, Clarissa. And it still seems like less of an honor, right? Even if it is. I mean, the name, whatever it was that Ben had his name removed, was the full version of Dan Markel wrote about it in the birth announcement. Okay. Interesting. Oh, thanks for pointing that out, Cassandra.
At the Adelson Institute, which was their family's dental practice. At the Adelson Institute, the defendant and Harvey Adelson were dentists, and Donna Adelson managed the office. After Dan Markel was killed on July 18, 2014, law enforcement interviewed Wendy Adelson. And Wendy Adelson acknowledged that her family had a motive to kill Dan Markel, or to want him dead. She admitted that her brother, the defendant, had even said that he looked into hiring a hitman to kill Dan Markel as a divorce present to her, but he decided to buy her a TV instead because it was cheaper.
Great to have all this confirmation from you guys. Neverly and Rabbit and Clarissa and Cassandra, Amy, Laurie. Yeah, no, it's great. We're all learning together, guys. Oh, thank you, C. Malone, for the super chat. Thanks for the support, C. C. Malone says, in celebration of the color green. Fantastic, C. Malone. Let's all celebrate the color green. Kermit Green.
And coincidentally, or not, that TV that this defendant bought his sister as a divorce gift instead of hiring a hitman would be Wendy Adelson's alibi for the morning of the murder when the victim was killed by a hitman. So this path of looking into...
Yes, Angel Baby. Check out the green hearts. Gator green, Amy. Good one.
Dan Markel's life to see who would have a motive to want him dead leads law enforcement to the Adelsons, including this defendant, a man who told his family that he'd looked into hiring a hitman to kill Dan Markel. The defense asked yesterday in jury selection, who's talked trash or heard somebody talk trash about an in-law, which is not a rare concept. A lot of people don't like their in-laws. But the difference here is that the defendant's comment stopped being just a little bit of trash talk when Dan Markel was actually killed by a hitman. While the police are trying to investigate, who in Dan Markel's personal life may have a motive to kill him, they're simultaneously going down that second path I described to y'all, which was tracking down the vehicle that the neighbor saw fleeing the crime scene. When law enforcement retraced Dan Markel's steps the morning of the murder, they uncovered some chilling surveillance video of a Prius fitting the description of the one seen by the neighbor following Dan Markel.
I love this as well. It's like the whole thing about, the trash talk, the bad joke about the hitman. Stop being trash talk when Dan Markel was killed by a hitman. It's like, if I joke all the time about running down running over my neighbor's cat. You know, if I say, I was leaving for work the other day and I thought I might run over your cat. And I kept doing it for years, told it all the time. Every time my neighbor saw me, I'd be like, hey, haven't run over the cat today, but I might do tomorrow. You know, some terrible joke like that. And then one day the neighbor's cat gets run over. Who do you think they're going to be coming to? Me. Where exactly were you around 10:15?
Into the Premier Gym parking lot, waiting for an hour while he was inside, and then following him home from Premier Gym back to his neighborhood. They got these surveillance images from city buses, from Premier, from everywhere they possibly could. And these surveillance images, coupled with a massive amount of phone data. And
oh, I see that, Rabbit. Look, Rabbit says that Lincoln's J middle name was not removed because the J was an Adelson honor to Harvey. Well, of course, they're not going to remove that, are they? Got to keep that. Got to protect the boys.
And SunPass records gathered in this case helped police to eventually track down the exact car used in this crime. But police still had to figure out who was in the Prius and why did they kill Dan Markel. As part of this really painstaking review that law enforcement did of all of these records, and when I say painstaking, finding this Prius and finding all of this.
Still need to find those 4 subscribers, guys. I know everyone in the stream tonight has already subscribed, but just on the off chance that someone out there has not subscribed, 4 more and we're hit 2,000 subscribers, guys. Just in time for our 100th show tomorrow. What a double landmark, guys. Double landmark. I'm going to go out and buy a green jacket for the occasion. Gator green.
Evidence in all of these records was not an easy task, and it took longer than your average investigation. It was very difficult to do. They combed through tons of phone records and even did what's called a tower dump, which is where law enforcement collected a list of all of the cell phone numbers that communicated with the cell tower that serviced different spots in Tallahassee that Dan Markel was at that morning, including Premier Gym, when the suspect's Prius were there. Because they thought if the person in the Prius was using their...
Hey, Clarissa, I think you see 1.99K, right? Is that what you see on the public? I don't know. I still see 1996, but that's in the YouTube studio where you get the full number. I don't know.
Phone at the time, then their number will be somewhere in this tower dump. They combed through all of that data and they found a number with a Miami area code belonging to a man named Sigfredo Garcia. Law enforcement examined all of Garcia's call logs and saw that he was in frequent contact with another number that was also present at Premier Gym that morning. And that number belonged to a man named Luis Rivera. Luis Rivera.
These hitmen with their own phones and rentals in their name. I mean, I'm amazed that they didn't put the hotel in their name as well. They got Shadrick Nobles to do that. Hi, Shadrick, if you're listening. Or hi, Shadrick's aunt. We think you guys are great.
Rivera is a lifelong friend of Sigfredo Garcia and is also from Miami. Police then looked at all of Garcia and Rivera's phone records, which showed that their phones left Miami about 2 days before this murder on July 16th of 2014. The phones came to Tallahassee, and on the day of the murder, July 18th, they followed Markel to Premier Gym. The phone data is consistent with both men turning off their phones just minutes before the murder and leaving their phones off until about an hour or so after the murder when they're well on their way back towards Miami. And then a bank's ATM camera.
You see, Clarissa, I should have been a detective. Just the facts, ma'am. Just the facts.
Caught both Garcia and Rivera in that light-colored Prius once they arrived back in the Miami area when they stopped at an ATM. So, police figured out the identity, and this should appear on the screens in front of you. The identity of the two men responsible for following and killing Dan Markel. Luis Rivera, his nickname is Tato, and Sigfredo Garcia, his nickname is Tudo. But they continued to look.
I don't know who Taco is. Oh, quote of the week, along with Charlie's, "Hey, how are ya?" I've been saying that for 2 days to the dog all day. In the morning, at night, "Hey, how are ya?"
For evidence of why two seemingly random men came all the way to Tallahassee to kill a man, Dan Markel, that they'd never met. You know, what or who is the connection between these killers and the victim? Well, phone records reveal that one of Sigfredo Garcia's most frequent contacts was a woman named Katherine McManua. Her nickname is Katie. Garcia and Katherine
I love how the state is literally laying out their case as if they're putting a puzzle together, right? It's as clear as one of Sarah Dugan's sentences. It's just everything fits, everything's in the right place, nothing needs to be hammered in. She's just slowly, methodically, but not boring us. You know, this is a good presentation. This is how to make something digestible, not at a 5th grade level, at a respectable level, at an appropriate level for a jury of regular people, a mix of people, right? Just all comes together. There's nothing confusing. There's nothing that seems like an assumption. It's just, yeah, look, we did a tower dump and there was this number connected to the Sigfredo Garcia number, and that number was also present at Premiere because we could tell from the tower dump, and we looked up that number and it was a guy called Luis Rivera, and his name was on the rental agreement from the Prius. And the most frequent number on Sigfredo's phone was a girl called Katherine McManua, who happened to be dating Charles Adelson at the time. It all fits.
McManua have a long history of an on-again, off-again relationship over the course of many years, and they actually share 2 kids in common. And lo and behold, when looking at the phone records, Katherine McManua is also one of the most frequent contacts of this defendant, Charlie Adelson. Law enforcement learned that at the time of Dan Markel's murder, this defendant was dating Katherine McManua. She was his girlfriend at the time. So Dan Markel was a problem that this defendant needed to solve for his family. The defendant was looking to hire a hitman to kill Dan Markel. Dan Markel ends up being killed by a hitman. And who ended up being the hitman? It was someone with a close relationship to this defendant's girlfriend. The hitman was the father of his girlfriend's children. So you can see how both leads in this case, followed by investigators, both of them charted paths to this defendant. Not only did looking into the motive lead law enforcement to the defendant because he wanted to hire someone to kill Dan Markel, but looking into the car, fleeing the scene, also led law enforcement to the defendant through his girlfriend at the time. So 2 different investigations arriving at the same conclusion.
It's like the perfect scientific experiment, isn't it? You send 2 groups of investigators down different paths and they both end up at the same place. I think you call that conclusive.
Law enforcement also tried to follow the money in this case. And that was a third way that the evidence in this case points to this defendant. Law enforcement reviewed bank records, employment records, DHS-MV records of all of the suspects and saw that in the months after the homicide, Sigfredo Garcia, Luis Rivera, and Katherine McBanois all acquired some big ticket items. Rivera and Garcia both bought motorcycles and cars. Katherine McBanois got a breast augmentation surgery and later received a black Lexus sedan whose previous owner was Harvey Adelson. Katherine McBanois's bank records were analyzed, and there was no check ever written or matching cash withdrawal for the car or the breast augmentation, which was paid for in cash. Bank records also showed that Katherine McBanois's account had a huge spike in cash deposits right around the time of the murder. She deposited more money into her account.
Yeah, don't forget Mossad, Neverly darling. I've always thought that mugshot of Charlie with the big hair, he looks like a Mossad, soldier or something.
In the 5 weeks following the murder than in the entire previous year before the murder. This was during a time when there was no record of her being employed anywhere. Also, about 2 months after the murder, the defendant added Katherine McBanois to the payroll at the Adelson Institute. And she began receiving regular checks from their business account every 2 weeks for 2 years after the murder. And this was despite the fact that she did not work at the Adelson Institute. So the money was talking, but what were the suspects saying? That's what law enforcement wanted to know. So as they're examining the phone records in this case, they see a distinct pattern surrounding important events and dates in this case. The phone calls, and they can't see the content, they can't hear the content of these calls in these phone records, but they see that the calls are occurring. And the phone calls always went from Donna Adelson to the defendant, then from the defendant to Katherine McBanois, then from Katherine McBanois to Sigfredo Garcia, and back the other way. Kind of like train cars, they only touch the car right in front of them. You know, Donna Adelson never calls Katherine McBanois or Sigfredo Garcia. Charlie Adelson never calls Sigfredo Garcia or vice versa. So if this is a murder for hire, as law enforcement...
Judge is getting out a skittle, Kurt can tell, yeah, and he's hoping it's going to be a red one or green. Only green Skittles for the judge. I bet he sits in chambers, separating them all out by color into these huge containers. All the green Skittles, the red Skittles, the purple Skittles, the yellow Skittles, orange. Is that it? Are there any more? Was there a time where they did a limited edition blue Skittles?
Suspects, could it be that the defendant was wisely insulating himself from the actual shooters by having Katherine McBanois.
Keep an eye out if Judge Everett yawns and puts his hand to his mouth, because that's how he gets the secret Skittles in during court.
Act as a middleman between them. Law enforcement decided to launch an undercover investigation designed to clarify who the members of the conspiracy were and how information traveled within this conspiracy. So police applied for and received court authorization to listen in real time to the phone calls of the defendant and Katherine McBanois. And this is what's known as a wiretap. By this point, the point that the law enforcement received authorization to do this wiretap.
You know those people that say all Skittles taste the same? Those people are crazy. I can tell any Skittle by tasting it with my eyes closed, no problem.
It was April of 2016. So it's been not quite, but almost 2 years since the murder of Dan Markel, which occurred in July of 2014. So by April of 2016, the defendant and Katherine McBanois are no longer dating at that point. They've been broken up since the fall of 2014. Katherine McBanois is actually back together with Sigfredo Garcia, the father of her children, at that point. The defendant has moved on to many other girlfriends since Katherine McBanois, but the defendant and Katherine McBanois are still in regular communication and have remained very close friends since the murder. And Rivera, who was the second hitman in that Prius, he, in April of 2016, was actually in federal prison doing time on another charge unrelated to this murder. So all of the members of this conspiracy have presumably gone on with their lives, believing they've gotten away with this murder. So even though law enforcement has authority to listen to their calls now, what reason would these people have?
Yeah, Judge Everett is trying to listen, but looking at Sarah's jacket, all he can hear is, "Taste the rainbow."
Have to still be discussing the murder at this point. So police needed to stage an event that would generate conversation between the conspirators about the murder. And the plan was to send an undercover agent posing as somebody on behalf of Luis Rivera, who was incarcerated, to walk up to Donna Adelson on the street and try to extort money out of her. And law enforcement refers to this as the bump. So this undercover agent walks up to Donna Adelson one day as she's leaving the Adelson Institute during the day. The undercover agent hands Donna Adelson a piece of paper. And on the piece of paper is an article about the murder of Dan Markel with his picture on it and, FSU professor killed. Also on the piece of paper.
I don't know, Amy. Amy says that she guesses that M&Ms would melt. But, Ruth Markel said that courtroom 3G is always very cold. And maybe that's why Judge Everett needs to have the temperature at a safe chocolate zone. Okay? So his tuck stash doesn't melt during proceedings. That giant bench up there, it's like a full sweet shop underneath. Reese's cups.
Are a phone number and the amount of $5,000. The undercover agent tells Donna Adelson that he knows that the Adelsons are taking care of Katie, and he's there to extort money out of her on Rivera's behalf in order to even things out. The undercover agent never says the defendant's name or anything about the defendant's involvement to Donna Adelson. Then law enforcement listens to see what will happen next. Will Donna Adelson go straight to the police to report this extortion attempt, or will something else entirely happen? As suspected, based on the previously observed communication pattern, the first person that Donna Adelson calls after the bump is the defendant. Despite the fact that the undercover agent never mentioned the defendant to her. On that first call, one would think that Donna Adelson would say to her son, you know, it's so crazy. Some man came up to me and he's handed me this article about Danny's murder, and he's you know, seems like he's demanding money from us. She never says any of that. In fact, she never says Dan Markel's name at all. Instead, she tells the defendant that she needs to talk to him in person, not over the phone, about some paperwork that was hand-delivered to her. She said that this paperwork, she says this to the defendant, it involves the two of us, and that he should know what she's talking about. She says that he should bring cash to their meeting. And she also says that this TV is about 5. Donna Adelson tells the defendant that the man who approached her mentioned an ex-girlfriend. Donna Adelson never says which ex-girlfriend she's referring to. She never says Katherine Magbanois or Katie's name to the defendant in that phone call. She only says that the blackmailer mentioned an ex-girlfriend. The defendant never asks his mom, whose ex-girlfriend? My ex-girlfriend? Which ex-girlfriend? He never asked that. Because as the evidence will show, he didn't need to. He knew that this TV is about 5 meant that she was being blackmailed about Danny's murder for $5,000. And he knew that the ex-girlfriend in question was Katherine Magbanois. And we know that because after this call with his mother, who's the defendant? The defendant calls Katherine Magbanois. He doesn't call his most recent ex-girlfriend.
Only 3 more subscribers to go to get to 2,000, guys. Have we got 3 non-subscribers in the channel? I mean, you know, we do put out a lot of content. I think it would be worth your time, your effort to just click subscribe. If not, we'll pick it up before I get up in the morning, no problem. But if we've got 3 people out there that are just itching to press that subscribe button, do it. Now is the time. Now is the exact time.
He doesn't even call the most recent ex-girlfriend because before the most recent ex-girlfriend, the one before that. No, he calls Katherine Magbanois. And his call to Katherine Magbanois is the only call that he makes to any ex-girlfriend after getting the information from his mother that the blackmailer mentioned an ex-girlfriend. And he had not dated Katherine Magbanois for 1.5 years at that point. And although the defendant threatens to do it often, neither he nor his mom ever report the matter to the police. The only people that he discusses it with in these calls is Donna Adelson and Katherine Magbanois. And you'll hear these phone calls between the conspirators. And as you listen to these calls, y'all will notice that they are being cautious about what they say over the phone. It's very apparent that they are very careful with their words because they are immediately suspicious that law enforcement could be listening to their conversations. So Donna Adelson calls the defendant, and the defendant's first call is to Katherine Magbanois. After that, the defendant then meets up with his mom in person, like his mom requested. And his mom gives him this paperwork that the undercover agent gave her. Then next, the defendant and Katherine Magbanois meet up in person. And they meet up at a restaurant in Miami called Dolce Vita. And while they sat at their table in this, Dolce Vita is a busy, noisy restaurant, an undercover FBI agent sat at a table nearby with a hidden camera in their bag and recorded this conversation. And in the recording, we hear the defendant discussing whether the man who walked up to his mom could be an undercover police officer or someone who's trying to blackmail them. And if it's the latter, if it's a blackmailer, is it somebody who's just trying to make a quick buck, or is it somebody who actually knows information from the inside?
Hey, thanks so much, Mary Bartlett, for the coffee. We just saw that come in. Thanks so much, Mary. And and you're in tears. Glad you're having a good time, Mary. Try not to scare your husband.
The defendant reassures Katherine McBanwell that if it is the police, that's a good thing. The defendant thinks that if it's the police, that means that they do not have enough evidence to charge anybody. In fact, the defendant tells her if they had any evidence, we would have already gone to the airport. The defendant starts giving her some legal advice. He says that, hey, in order to prove that someone committed a crime, you have to be able to put the person at the scene of the crime at the time it was committed, which unfortunately for them is not an accurate statement of the law. It's important to note, too, at the time of this conversation at Dolce Vita, no arrests had been made. The only thing that police had released to the public was a photo of the Prius that fled the scene. This was the Prius that Garcia and Rivera rented and used the day of Dan Markel's murder. So police knew at that point that it was Garcia and Rivera who were in the Prius, but the public did not know that yet, and no arrests had been made because they wanted to do this undercover investigation. And so the fact that this photo of this Prius had been released to the public is interesting in light of some of the things that y'all will hear the defendant say to Katherine McBanwell in the Dolce Vita recording. He starts giving Katherine McBanwell several analogies, all involving rental cars used to commit crimes. He reassures her that, hey, if DNA is found in a car, all that means is that at one point the person sat in the car. And if that car was later used in a crime, police can't prove that just from a...
How many Skittle colors are there? Because if we've got how many, let's count them: red, orange, yellow, green, purple. Is that it? Red, orange, yellow, green, purple. I think that's it, right? All right, we must have 5 people going to Donna's trial from the Metrix community. I think those 5 people, we can nominate them later on Discord, need to go head to toe in each in their individual Skittle color and all sit in a row, and maybe Judge Everett will not be able to proceed. Recess, 10-minute recess.
person's DNA being in the car. The defendant points out to her that if a rental car is found that was at a crime scene, police also have to prove who was driving it at the time. He gives her a very relevant hypothetical of her renting a car in Miami and someone asking to borrow it and driving to Orlando to commit a robbery, and how she would be innocent in that hypothetical because she wasn't in the car at the time of the robbery. So through these analogies, the defendant is reassuring Katherine McBanwell that even if police identify who rented the car that fled the scene, they still would not have enough evidence to hold anybody responsible for the murder, even if they did find out it was Garcia and Rivera. The defendant also says that crimes are tough to prove unless someone actually witnessed the suspect commit a crime, or a suspect makes a confession, or a suspect is caught on a wire talking about the crime. So the defendant's trying to reassure her about the lack of evidence. And hey, as long as we all stay quiet, then we don't have anything to worry about. At one point, the defendant asked her, "Let me ask you a question." And then he asked her about money. He says, "When everybody was there the next day, did you take any money? Like, are any of you driving around in a Bentley? Or no, it's not like any of you are driving around in a Bentley or cruising around in a mega yacht." So here the defendant's pointing out that the money wasn't used to buy anything flashy that would draw the attention of the police. And when discussing, and you all will hear during the course of this trial why his statement or his question about the money from the next day is.
Okay, there's a poll on Skittle colors, but apparently I can only add 4 options. So how do we know if people like purple? Oh, I can't vote on the poll?
Is particularly important. The evidence will show that Katherine McBan.
Man, people are hitting this poll with some velocity. Fuck all this legal stuff. Skittle colors.
Went to the defendant's home the night of the murder, where he paid her in cash. And the next day, Katherine McBanois paid Garcia and Rivera their cuts of the money. When discussing the possibility of whether this is actually some gangster trying to blackmail his family for money, the defendant says that whoever this person is, whoever it is, knows information. The defendant told Katherine McBanois that there are 2 ways of dealing with this guy. They could call the police, but then the guy blackmailing them would be charged with trying to blackmail his family. And the blackmailer would start talking, and he would start calling out Katherine McBanois's name. And then police are going to be asking questions about what happened. The other option is to pay the blackmailer, but let him know that this is a one-time thing, and try to scare the blackmailer off by saying, "Hey, if you come around again, we're going to the police." So the defendant then gives Katherine McBanois very precise instructions. He wants her to call the blackmailer and tell him that, this would be what he wants Katherine McBanois to say. "My friends," meaning the Adelson family, "have no idea what you're talking about. And I don't have any idea what you're talking about either. But the name of the person who you said is incarcerated sounds familiar. So I'm going to give you this money as charity to help the less fortunate. But don't contact these people again."
Can I just say that I don't think I can vote on the poll, but no one has voted yellow, and I would be tempted to vote yellow. I haven't got a problem with yellow Skittles at all. I'd say not red. Green I like, orange I like, yellow I like, not red, not purple. I mean, they're all basically the same. I'm being picky, but yellow's good. Lemon.
Or they're going to go to the police. And the defendant said he would give Katherine McBanois the $5,000 to pay off the blackmailer, except he's concerned, though, that this won't resolve the issue for good. The defendant is worried that this guy is not going to go away, that he's going to keep coming back for more and more money. And the defendant offers a solution to have this blackmailer killed. And he says he's willing to pay whatever it takes.
See, Angel Baby, We'd be the perfect people, you and me, to share one packet of Skittles. You like the red and purple, and I'm down with all the others. How great would that be, Angel baby? Let's get a jumbo pack.
The defendant tells her that, this is the defendant talking to Katherine Magbanua, this guy, meaning the blackmailer, is effing with him and his wife. And you better kill him or he's going to be a big problem because he knows who you are. And the defendant then says, if he can't handle this, I'll have somebody else do it. The defendant says, so help me God.
If he can't handle this, I'll have somebody else do it. But I'm not setting you up. Just wanted to make that clear that I'm not talking about the first layer extortion, and I'm not setting you up, and you better kill him because he's going to be a big problem. But I'm not setting you up.
If they fuck with my family, it's going to be Nazi shit because this will be done. I mean, Katie, I don't.
Nazi shit was an expression that Katie would use to describe someone going crazy, because I think Nazis were absolutely crazy people. And she would use this expression synonymous with, I was saying that I'm going to pay someone to go crazy on this guy because the Nazis were crazy and the Nazis were crazy.
I don't care what I spend. It's important to note during this conversation and the entire wiretap, the defendant never says Sigfredo Garcia's name. But the evidence will show.
Hey, Wednesday, good to see you again. How you doing? Been busy, huh? Skittles, a game played especially in Britain in which players roll a ball and objects shaped like bottles to try to knock them down and score points. Next up, Donna. Yeah, it's a bit like bowling, but the pins are in a different shape, diamond shape, and the balls are smaller. It's fun.
That the defendant was talking about Sigfredo Garcia when the defendant says that the blackmailer was effing with him and his wife. And if he can't do it, I'll find someone else who will. Because immediately after that, the defendant checks with Katherine Magbanua to make sure that Garcia has no hard feelings towards him, no reason not to help him. He says, hey, I have you on salary. You think he'd be happy about that? And he also says, I mean, our paths never crossed, meaning, hey, Garcia wasn't in the picture when he and Katherine Magbanua were together. There wasn't any overlap. After hearing that the defendant wants someone killed and is willing to pay whatever it takes to get it done, Katherine Magbanua then asks the defendant to help her out. And the defendant reassures her that she'll be taken care of by saying, he says, I don't have to. Sometimes his chairs can be a little wobbly. I know this is taking a bit, but I'm almost done. Thank y'all for being patient. All right, so she asked him to help her out. And the defendant reassures her that she'll be taken care of. He says he doesn't have to tell her the things that he'll do for her. He shows her what he'll do for her. She doesn't have to ask him for anything. He looks for things to do. He says, hey, when someone's birthday's coming up or there's car problems, she doesn't have to ask. He looks for ways to help. And after his meeting with Katherine Magbanua, the defendant immediately calls Donna Adelson to let her know that everything's fine. And he does this using some pretty obvious code words, which y'all will hear. And you'll hear the conspirators often use words to mask the meaning of what they're actually talking about. Katherine Magbanua then, also using these code words, tasked Garcia with calling the number on the paperwork and finding out if a blackmailer is a legitimate associate of Rivera or not. And in the series of recorded calls that follow, you guys are going to hear these conspirators talking and using words like TV, false leads, listings, properties, clients, rap songs, CDs, pot-bellied pigs, relationship advice, all these different terms that are normal terms any of us may use, but they're used in context in these calls that, if you're listening to the conversation, do not make any sense. For example, in the calls, the defendant and Katherine McManua don't outright debate the pros and cons of whether they should pay this blackmailer. Instead, they talk about the fact that this property is cheap. They might expect a property like this to even be $1 million. This property seems like a great deal, but if you get the wrong tenant in there, the tenant may keep increasing the rent, and that tenant may become a leash that never leaves you.
It's just amazingly bad, these analogies. The tenant may keep increasing the rent. Why would the tenant be increasing the rent? Sounds like a great tenant.
So it will be up to y'all to decide whether this defendant is actually worried about a future tenant of a property that might raise the rent and pay him more money, or if the
Rabbit Inc. It is 3:50 a.m.
defendant is actually worried that if he pays off the blackmailer, then the blackmailer may continue to come back again and again, or send a cousin or a friend to become a leech that never leaves him, that he can't get rid of. In another of these calls, the defendant tells Katherine McManua that whoever this person is, this blackmailer is, he's got a lot of effing details. And in another, they discuss the fact that this blackmailer is not from the inside. And the defendant says that this guy is probably not from the first layer, but the second layer. So not someone who got info from Garcia, but maybe somebody who got info from Rivera. But one fact, and let me just say, as the jury, you all will interpret.
Okay, guys, the very next person to subscribe will be the 2,000th subscriber to the show. What an honor. I would love that to be me. I would collect that and covet that and keep that until the day I die. I was the 2,000th member subscriber on True Crime Metrix' show. I'd have that engraved on my tombstone. What are you waiting for? Click the button.
And decide what they're really talking about in these calls. Only y'all can determine the meaning and the weight to give this evidence, and only you can separate
lemon Oreos. Okay, Amy, you've just shut down the internet. Please tell me that doesn't exist. I know there's a flavor for everything in the States, but that has no place on our planet. Okay? I don't care what country you're in, lemon Oreos need to be sent back to wherever they came from.
just mere coincidences from evidence in a conspiracy.
Hey, we're getting the jumbo pack of Skittles tomorrow, guys. And I'm going to separate them all by color in honor of Judge Everett.
But one fact, though, is really clear throughout these calls, is that all of these conspirators are hopeful that this blackmailer is law enforcement just trying to get information, because they think if it's law enforcement and the police don't have enough to bring charges, just fishing for information versus the other possibility, which would obviously be much worse for them, that the Adelsons are being blackmailed by somebody who actually knows inside information about their roles in Dan Markel's murder and may tell the police what they know. So after this undercover operation, which was in 2016, Luis Rivera, Sigfredo Garcia, and Katherine McManua are arrested. They're charged with the same charges before y'all in this trial. And Luis Rivera ended up cutting
Hey, Rabbit, what's all this 1,000 business? That is so last month. That is so July. It's 2,000, Rabbit.
a deal with the state to tell law enforcement the truth about the murder of Dan Markel and the people responsible. Rivera told law enforcement that he was hired by Sigfredo Garcia to help kill.
Hold the champagne, Neverly. It's still at 1,999. I'm just letting Rabbit know because she said, "Who is the 1,000 going to be?" But that was last month.
Dan Markel. And Rivera described how Garcia told him that Katherine McBanois, the mother of Garcia's children, secured this job for them. And the job was in Tallahassee and it paid $100,000, with Rivera's being about a third of it, $35,000. Rivera explained that he and Garcia actually made 2 trips to Tallahassee with the intent.
Welcome, Jen Winters. Great to have you as a member. Fantastic work, Jen. Good to see you.
Killing Dan Markel. The first one was a month before the murder. It was in June of 2014. And the second was when Dan Markel was actually killed in July of 2014. Rivera said that he bought a gun off the street for that second trip and Garcia rented a car. For the June trip. Rivera bought a gun off the street and Garcia rented the car for that trip. Garcia and Rivera did some scouting on that trip of Dan Markel's residence, some surveillance, but ultimately couldn't get the job done. They ended heading back to Miami.
Hey, C. Malone, Fancy's been a subscriber to Metrix for ages, and you know it. Even follows us on Instagram now, as well as everybody else should. Link in the description, guys.
During the trip to Tallahassee, he said that Garcia had a piece of paper with a picture of the man that they were supposed to kill on it, and some handwritten notes as well. Cell phone records corroborated Rivera's information about the June trip. Rivera also told a story about an incident in Tallahassee where he and Garcia were riding down the road in the rented Prius, and Garcia accidentally discharged the murder weapon and the bullet struck the floorboard of the Prius. Law enforcement tracked down that actual Prius again and were able to see evidence in the undercarriage that corroborated Rivera's information about the accidental discharge. So they're looking at the phone evidence, they're trying to find whatever they can to kind of corroborate what he's telling them. I mentioned earlier that both men, Garcia and Rivera, cut their phones off from the time that they left Premier and kept them off until well after the murder when they're on their way back home. Rivera said that the first call that either of them made after the homicide was from Garcia to McBanois, where Garcia told her that the job was done. And McBanois assured them that they would get their money the next day, which they did. Rivera says when Katherine McBanois brought cash to him at his home. And all this information that Luis Rivera provided them was corroborated by, including when the money was dropped off, was corroborated by cell phone records in this case. Well, Luis Rivera told police that the next day after the murder, he was paid in cash by Katherine McBanois, and that the money was packaged in a very unusual way. The money was in stacks of $100 bills, and the money was stapled together. The stacks of 100s, every $1,000 was stapled together. During this trial, y'all will hear that the defendant had access to a lot of cash, and nothing's wrong with that. He had a lot of cash because his family gives cash discounts at their dental practice, and he keeps the cash that he receives in a safe. Again, nothing wrong about that either. However, what is relevant in this case is that the defendant had a very unusual practice of keeping the cash in his safe in $1,000 stacks of $100 bills that were stapled together, just like the money Luis Rivera received. Over the last few years, since the 2016 arrests and interview of Luis Rivera, law enforcement has not stopped working on this case. There were trials in 2019 and 2022, so right before the pandemic and right after the pandemic, of co-conspirators. Law enforcement also continued to try to gather all the evidence that they possibly could. They continued to interview people who may possibly have any information about the case. They tried to clarify any audio recordings that couldn't be clearly heard. While the phone wiretaps are very clear, the wiretap conversations that took place in public places when these people were meeting in person were not clearly audible back in 2016. Some still aren't, but because these public places are often too noisy. For instance, the recording of the conversation between the defendant and Katherine Magbanua at Dolce Vita had too much background noise to be able to clearly hear what the conspirators were talking about. However, since 2016, as technology developed over the years, and thanks to law enforcement's just continued dedication, law enforcement eventually found an expert that was formerly employed by the CIA with improved technology and enough expertise to clarify this recording at Dolce Vita that y'all will hear. And he did that by being able to reduce as much back.
So ring the bell, ring the biggest bell you can find. 2,000 subscribers. Who was it? Let us know in the comments, guys. You are number 2,000, the subscriber of the future, the millennium of subscribers. Great stuff. Congratulations. Skittles. All right, tomorrow's episode, our 100th episode, is going to be a Skittles fiasco. A fiesta of Skittles. Skittles everywhere. Every color we can find. 150 bags of Skittles in Judge Everett's honor for our 2,000 subscribers, 100th live show. Well done, and thank you to whoever you were. Fantastic stuff. Just as we're coming to the end, look at the timing of this. Right before the end. I tell you, we're getting so good at timing on this show, man.
Background noise as possible. And once this recording was clarified, which was actually just...
Who was it? Are they not in the live? Let us know. Don't be shy. Who are you? You are getting your name engraved on a plaque in the studio.
Just early last year in 2022, the state arrested this defendant. The presentation of this evidence, as y'all can see from opening, it's a lot. It's a lot of information. It's going to take a little bit of time, and it may be tedious at times. And I want to thank y'all in advance for the careful attention to all of the evidence y'all see in here during this trial. When you'll see that this defendant carried out his plan to hire a hitman to kill Dan Markel. He conspired and he solicited Katherine Magbanua to get this murder done. And he paid her for the job once it was completed. This defendant acted in furtherance of this murder plot that went beyond just thinking about it or talking about it. And these acts make him guilty as a principal to first-degree murder, just as if he pulled the trigger himself. While the defendant's choices helped solve a problem within his family, they came at a very high price. He took the life of a loving father of 2 little boys, and he caused a lifetime of grief for Dan Markel's loved ones. Y'all heard a lot in jury selection about how important this trial is to the defendant, which I'm sure it is. But Dan Markel was loved. He was a brother. He was a son. And this trial is his family's opportunity to see justice done for the person who set up their son's murder. And at the conclusion of this evidence, y'all will be convinced beyond any reasonable doubt that this defendant is guilty. And at that point, we'll ask you for the only verdict that does justice in this case, which is a verdict that the defendant is guilty as charged. Thank y'all.
Is the defense prepared to give its opening statement?
Yes, Your Honor.
You may proceed.
Yeah, he's going to proceed. He just needs to fix the wires. Okay, did our fantastic new member of the family let us know who they are? KGB. KGB, our 2000th subscriber. Welcome, K. Welcome, K. Fantastic. Fantastic stuff. What a nice note to end on, guys. So what are we doing now? We all heading over to Steinbeck, to Crime and Coffee, or Discord. Thank you so much, Amy, for waking me up. I was asleep 15 minutes late to my own broadcast. But what a landmark it was to be. It was the 2000th subscriber, the end of our 99th show. Doesn't that just all sync up really well? For our 100th show, we will be starting it with 2,000 plus subscribers. Thanks so much, KG. Okay, someone asked me what time we're on tomorrow. I'm not sure. We will be having a more stringent, fixed schedule as soon as this summer, Mojave Desert style summer, is over. But it's been a bit tough at the moment. But yeah, so tomorrow we'll probably be starting around 7 or 8 in the evening, Eastern time. But I got a feeling that I might do 1 or even 2 shorter shows earlier in the day just to cover some stuff that I've been wanting to cover that's not too long. Don't worry if you can't catch the live in the day. Catch it on replay at some later stage. But I'm just going to be putting stuff out in the day tomorrow, I think. Sunday fun day. Okay, guys, remember there's a link to our Discord server for free. Fantastic. It's just like live chat comments, but we don't have to have a broadcast. It's just 24 hours a day. Open chat community. Multiple rooms, subjects. It's fun. It's free. And the link is in the description. Just wrapping up these comments, guys. No problem, Rabbit Inc. Right in. Kurt, you've been on fire tonight with this. Thank you so much for bringing this Skittles mania to the jukebox this evening, Kurt. That was a lot of fun. Yeah, we all live on Discord, and inside a giant taco. I don't know who Taco is. Oh, what are the leading quotes at the moment? You're either stupid or you're lying. Oh, I just love that one. Hey, how are you? No, thanks. Thanks, KG. You've made history today. Okay, we're going to sign off the stream for this evening, guys. We will see you multiple stages tomorrow. And yeah, many thanks to everyone in the comments, members, moderators, and all the rest of you as well. Fantastic contributions as usual, guys. Couldn't ask for more from this community. Hilarious comments, on point comments. And I just think it's fantastic how much we can all agree that Rashbaum sucks and that Sarah Dugan is awesome in any skittle color she wears, whether it's green or purple. How did we do on the poll? Let's check the poll. Okay, so 44% said red Skittles, 20% orange, yellow was 4%, that's low, and 31% green. So red won. I can't imagine purple would have been more popular than red. But we don't have a number for purple. You can only have 4 options on these polls. Okay, we're going to end that poll. Jail sucks. Yeah, that was a good one too, Albert. What a time to be alive. Okay, guys, don't be an Adelson. Be kind to each other and have a safe drive home. See you later, guys.